Yo, what's going on everyone? We have the meta snapshot for patch 13.20b, and multicasters multicasted themselves into the next week. So this is a week 2 update, so it is much more developed than last week because we've had a lot of tournaments being played on this patch. There are going to be even more tournaments played on this patch, and we want to climb a little bit before the set ends. So let's get into all the comps. We're going to do the summary first, then we'll get into how to play every single comp. So in the S tier, we have Multicasters, Demacia. Those are going to be the go-tos, mainly Multicasters. It's like the cringe comp of the patch. It is what it is. A tier, we have Vertical Noxus, which is a new addition. Azir Flex, Ashe Reroll, Neeko Invoker, Void Reroll, Bilgewater, Cho Bitem, Gunner Reroll, Vanquishers, Demonflare Swain, the boss Sett, Gunners, Shurima, Rogue Reroll, Sorcerers, Bastion, Aphelios, and Noxus Reroll. And then we have Karma, Challengers, and Naafiri. For Legends, a very popular one is going to be Earth. Next up is Twisted Fate, used for forcing a lot of different comps. Poro's still good, and then Ezreal seems to be the other pick there. In the A tier, Caitlyn, Vladimir, some people play them too, and then after that we have everything else. Personally for me, I think Twisted Fate or Earth gonna be the way to go right now. I'm always like a big Poro fan though, so it is a little tough, but sometimes you just want to play multicasters every game, and then you go Twisted Fate, or you just go for all the crazy traits with Earth. It's pretty fun too. But let's get into the comps. In the S tier, we have multicasters. So multicasters are going to be, again, by far the best right now. Go Pandora's items. So you play Twisted Fate Legend in order to play Twisted Fate in game. So if you want to check more stuff out, we have a coaching gameplay link over here on the website, bunnymuffins.lol/meta, and you could check out all the games and all the notes if you want to for every single comp that we're going to go over. But 2-cost reroll is going to be the way to go. Just stay level 6 for the whole game and just get Twisted Fate 3, Talia 3, Galio 3, complete those, level up, put in as many multicasters as you can. So pretty much this comp has the combination of both being very easy to play and being extremely good. Highly recommended if you want free LP and you don't really care how you get it. So for all those unethical people or whatever, definitely a go-to comp. Next up we have is Demacia. Demacia, really good if you get Demacia Crest. A lot of people are playing Earth for this very reason because you just have a high chance of getting an extra crest. Demacia is one of the outs that you have, and it's probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest, because Mordekaiser with RFC with the Demacia crest is an absolute monster. And then if you ever get to 9 Demacia, that's the best comp in the game ever. Let me show you one reason why. At 9 Demacia, you get 150 armor and 150 magic resistance, and then you also get radiant items on 6 different champions. So if we try to compare that trait to anything else, if we add in, for example, Bastion gives you 140 armor and MR, albeit it is increased during the first 10 seconds of combat. But the thing about Demacia is that it goes on pretty much every one of your units, and you also get radiant items. That's how powerful 9 Demacia is. It's absolutely ridiculous. If we look at the traits, it's just a 1.34. It's the best trait in the game right now. Obviously, it's hard to get. You need level 9 or you need 9 units, and then you also need a bunch of Demacia spatulas. So it is hard to get, but if you do get it, you pretty much win the game. But standard leveling for this, you want to make sure all your carries only get 2 items. Here are some recommended items down here. And depending on how many Demacia you're running, if you have 7 Demacia, you get 3 radiant items. So just make sure 3 of your Demacia units have an extra slot on them. So if you have Quinn 3, have 2 items on Quinn. If you have Quinn 2, maybe have 2 items on Jarvan so that Jarvan gets it. And obviously if you have 9 Demacia, put 2 items on everyone and you're going to be good to go. Next up we have is the A tier. A tier, Vertical Noxus. This one's going to be one of those Mordekaiser comps. It's another really good comp with Earth because getting a lot of Noxus early makes you snowball the game incredibly hard because you just get a lot of stacks early on. And then you have the option of having Noxus Azir being a general threat as well. So Mordekaiser is going to be your main carry. Azir is going to be the secondary carry depending on who has items, who's 2-star, things like that. Swain going to be a solid tank. Sion going to be a solid tank also in the late game. The one weakness of this build, I would say, is in the mid to late game before you get Sion, because your front line does get a little weak. That's why you could do Crown Guard builds with Mordekaiser instead of going all in on an RFC or something like that. Other things you could do is instead of running Heimerdinger, running Jarvan as one of your tanks. Though Jarvan's more for CC, he is a tank, but he's not as tanky as some other characters, I would think. But this comp is best if you get +1 Noxus at 2-1 or 3 Noxus early on so that you could start stacking. And then if you ever win streak in the early game, the comp is just like infinitely easier to play because yeah, your team, once you get the first stack, the second stack's easier, so on and so forth until you get all the stacks and then you're just dominating everyone in the mid game. Very solid build though. I think people were playing this much earlier in the set, but then it kind of died off a little bit. There are some other Multicaster comps going around. Then we had like the Reroll Noxus. But right now this comp is very good because Earth is very popular. Next up we have is Azir Flex. Azir Flex has always been a go-to because Azir is just like always playable, not always like super duper horrible, but always like decent. And you just throw some frontline with him. You throw a secondary carry. It could be Silco. Sometimes it's going to be Mordekaiser. Sometimes it even could be someone else. And after that, you just throw a bunch of tanks in front and hope for the best. So Nasus, Azir, Jarvan plus 5 other units is generally what the comp is. And you're going to have a good time as long as you have a Rage Blade or a Nashor's on Azir, preferably both, but getting a lot of bows is a little tough nowadays, and having some sort of magic resist shredding. So that could either be an Ionic Spark on your Nasus or a Static Shiv on your Azir. Both of them are going to work just fine. After that, depending on what items you have and whatever you're hitting, get a secondary carry. It could be Silco or Mordekaiser, or it could just be like a random legendary that you get some games. That's going to be the way to play this. Next up we have is Ashe Reroll. Ashe Reroll, only play this with Ionia Spat, don't really play it anywhere else. 3-star Ashe averages, I think like a 3.75, somewhere around there. And considering everyone's playing Twist of Fate and taking all the 2-cost units out of the pool, Ashe is kind of like a free go-to right now. Again, the only thing you need is the Ionia Spat, which can be a little annoying, but again, if you run Earth, you're going to be perfectly fine because you're just going to get Ionia Spat for Ashe for free and be able to play the comp. That's really the only requirement. It's like having the Ionia Spat. Having Armor Shred is good too, and that's going to be the main point of the comp. Just stay level 6, reroll for 2-cost units. Sett and Ashe going to be your only 2 that you care about. Then level up, play the regular Ionia board. Next up we have is Neeko Invokers. This comp is pretty fun. It either is the best comp in the world or the worst comp in the world. It's like not really much in between. After that, you have a couple of different options. So Soraka is really good as your primary carry, but some people like using Karma. So when do you go for Soraka? When do you go for Karma? If you want to go 1st or 8th even harder, go for Karma 3 because Karma 2 is absolutely useless, but Karma 3 absolutely devastates everyone. So if you're on a high eco portal or a reroll portal, such as Shifting Sands, where you have like the Pandora's Bench on everyone, then go for Karma 3. But if it's not that one, or if it's not something that gives you like a ton of gold, just go for Soraka because it's much easier to hit a Soraka 3 than it is a Karma 3. Because it's just really expensive going for both Neeko and Karma. Essentially what Soraka does is stabilizes you during the game and then it allows you to have more time to find your Neeko. That's why you do the 2-cost reroll pattern and then later on you reroll for all your 3 costs. But the main things you want on Soraka are going to be Archangels and a healing item. So Archangels is really good, and then whenever you have a ramping item, healing items such as Gunblade are really good because they just end up dealing a lot of damage, so you get a lot of value from the Gunblade. And then after that for Neeko, she could pretty much use like all sorts of different items, like any tank item, any AP item, any bruiser item, any healing item, gonna be fine on Neeko. Just throw items on her because you will need them just so you don't die, because the way you win with Neeko is having Neeko 3, not Neeko 2. So in order to maximize your chance of getting Neeko 3, you just need to be slamming items and saving health in the early game. That's how I like to play it, but there are many ways to fry a fish. But it's definitely the easier way to play it that way. So going down into the how to play section, again, all on the website, bunnymuffins.lol/meta. You want to roll at level 6 in order to get Soraka because she just completely stabilizes everything. And then after that, go to level 7, get everyone else, and then add in as many Bastions as you can. Next up we have is Void Reroll. So Void Reroll is one variation of Cho'Gath Reroll. And we will go over the other Cho'Gath reroll with Bruisers later, but this is just another option that you could kind of go for. We have Cho'Gath 3 for the early game, Vel'Koz 3 for the mid game, and then if you get even more stuff, Rek'Sai is pretty good too. There are a couple of different leveling patterns. You could go pure 1-cost reroll, or you could do the kind of like hybrid 1 and 2-cost reroll, going for both Kassadin and the Cho'Gath. And then you also get a little bit more chance for 3 costs in Vel'Koz at level 5. So instead of rolling down to 30 on stage 3-1, you just do a full slow roll at level 5. So just roll down to 50 every single turn and then go for that there. A lot of people have been asking me what slow roll is, and definitely if you need to check out a game of slow rolling, check out the game we have with Twisted Fate over here. We definitely do something very similar in that game, even though it's with 2 costs, because we just roll down to 50 every single turn, and then we find a time to all in later on. But let's go into the next comp, which is Bilgewater Nyla. Nyla is disgusting, absolutely disgusting with rapid fire cannon. So if you are a Twisted Fate player and you don't want to play Twisted Fate, the champion, go for Nyla because you will need all the RFCs on her. So you need 4 bows, 5 bows if you want a Giant Slayer to make that happen. And yeah, the difference between Nyla with no RFCs versus 1 RFC versus 2 RFCs is very big. So you really can't do this without Twisted Fate. Or maybe you're really lucky, you're playing Ornn, you just rip a sniper's focus, and that could be another way you get the extra range. But apart from that, it's going to be pretty difficult to play this comp. So that's one of the complaints that a lot of people have about this set. They say that like, oh, a lot of the carries, they like absolutely need certain items. And this is one of those examples. But she's absolutely a monster with it. And you just play 3 Bilgewater, throw in 1 Vanquisher with Ashe, throw in the Freljord with Sejuani so you don't need other sources of armor penetration. You have the option of adding in Scion after that because Sejuani's a bruiser. You have the option of adding in Aatrox because you're playing Nautilus, and then Jarvan because you're playing Misfortune. So you're just running like solid value units as your front line, and that's going to be kind of the team standard leveling pattern for this because you're going for 4 cost units and just throwing random stuff in. So there are a lot of different ways to play this. You could go like full Bilgewater, like 5 or 7 Bilgewater, but you could also do something like this. So it's like a little flexible if you want to pretend that you're a flex player even though you're playing Twisted Fate. Next up we have is Cho Bitem. Cho Bitem is going to be another Cho'Gath reroll comp, but this time it's with Bruisers and Cassiopeia carry. It's been nerfed a couple of times, but it's still very good. But some people prefer the Void version, some people prefer this version. The way you decide is if you're getting a lot of Cassiopeias, go for this version. If you're getting a lot of Renekton's, go for this version. But if you're not, then go for the other version. So you have a couple of different options there. But 6 Bruiser going to be the big power spike. If you ever get a +1 Bruiser, this comp becomes like 10 times easier to play. And obviously you want to do 1 cost reroll pattern to get Cho'Gath, Renekton, and Cassiopeia 3-star because they're super duper duper important. Next build up we have is Gunner, Reroll, and Jinx and Jace. Same build as before. You could do the Piltover stuff, but you don't need like the super duper big T-Hex because sometimes you stabilize beforehand because you're rolling for either Jinx or Jace 3 and they just win you a game because you get them to 2-star early on. Ideally you have both of them 3-star. I guess ideally you have all 8 of your units 3-star, but that's not very possible, right? But ideally you have both Jinx and Jace and then kind of get 1 tank. It could be Vi, it could be Warwick, depending on what your board looks like, but they're all pretty solid options. Only go for both if you can actually itemize both. A lot of times a mistake I see is that people go for 3-stars that they don't put items on, and that's when you know you like did something wrong because a 3-star is only worth the gold if you can actually put items on them. So if you only have 4 damage items and you're putting 2 on Jinx, 2 on Jace, probably not good enough. You probably should just focus on one of them. And then later on in the game, if you do have the opportunity to get both of them to 3-star and get more items for them, then that's kind of when you want to go for that. Next up we have is a classic Vanquisher Ionia build. Nyla going to be the star again. Xayah also very good. They complement each other pretty well because they're both 4 costs. They're both AD, so you could build a Last Whisper. It helps both of them out. They share a lot of similar items. You just want like some damage items on them. And then you use Shen as your main tank. Shen is like really tanky, I think. He might be like one of the best like tanks for tankiness in the game right now. Like other tanks are good for like their other utility, but I think in terms of like pure tankiness, Shen just feels the tankiest to me right now. But maybe that's more of a feeling thing. I can't really prove it or anything. But you want to do standard leveling for this build because you want 4 cost carries. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 costs here, and then you have 1, 5 cost. And you could use a lot of the different legendaries in this build. You could use Heimerdinger, you could use Aatrox. You could even use Bel'Veth if you get an Ionia crest. Bel'Veth is really good with that. Cassante is also good with the Shen. And then of course there is Ahri because she's in Ionia. Another thing you could do for super duper late game with Vanquishers is going for 9 Ionia if you're playing Earth and you get a lot of Ionia spats. That's definitely another good win condition right there. I think it's like the 3rd best 9 trait, I forget, but all 9 traits are extremely good. Next up we have is Demonflare Swain. So Swain is going to be only playable with the Demonflare augment, obviously. Titan's Resolve going to be the best item on him because anytime you could get Titan's Resolve fully stacked, it's going to be worth it on any of those champions. Silco is going to be in the back line with the Morello. So Swain tanks forever, the Morello burns everyone forever, and then hopefully you win out the fights that way. But a pretty solid comp overall. Just do 2 cost reroll. Really easy to hit because everyone's going for Twisted Fate. and then some people will go for Ashe. Next build up we have is the boss Sett. Very similar playstyle to the Swain one, except for this one, instead of going vertical Sorks, you go for Ionia Vanquisher build, like all the other ones we've been seeing in the past, and you could also go for Ashe. So you do Sett and Ashe. Obviously, you want the Ionia crest on your Ashe, but if you don't get it, it's fine. You could still play a board like this and go for Ashe 3-star anyways, but do more of a utility Ashe build. Last Wister Morello, just debuff everyone whenever she shoots her volley, put her in the center of the map, just so she hits everyone, and then either Sett or Xayah are going to carry the game. So with Sett, you might be wondering like what items are best, because you could data check Sett's items and you see that like it's kind of all over the place. Some say put defensive items on him, some say put offensive items on him, some say put bruiser items on him. The truth is you just want to build any item and just slam it on him, because he really could use almost anything, because you want to just save HP. That's going to be the most important resource in the game right now. And the difference between like super best in slot Sett versus just like pretty good items on Sett is like very minimal. You just want 3 items on him and have him 3-star. One difference with this comp from Demonflare is that you could stabilize on Sett 2-star sometimes and then go up in levels and try to find the regular Ionia board. It's optional, but you have to make the decision depending on how many sets you have. If you have like 4 or 5 sets, then you could be like, hey, maybe I go for Sett 3. But if you only have 3 of them, or if you only have like 2 copies of Sett, then you're like, oh, maybe I just play regular and like give up my augment. So with Swain, you don't really want to do that. But with Sett, you do have the option to kind of try that. Next up, we have Gunners. Gunners are only going to be playable with Piltover, in my opinion. So if you do get Piltover starts at 2-1, some people do it on 2-2, but I only do it on 2-1. If not, I just give up on Piltover. You go for super lose streak, then you win it back, get a big T-Hex. Sometimes you get a 30 or 40 T-Hex, and then that's enough to just win the game with, along with whatever loot that you get during the cash out. Very powerful comp. I like it a lot personally, but very situational because you need the Piltover. Next up we have is Shurima. Seen better days, seen better days. Probably the other Azir build's going to be a little bit better on average, but if you are playing Earth and you get a bunch of Shurima spatulas, then that's when you want to be playing vertical Shurima. Again, 9 Shurima, very powerful, but very difficult to get to because 1, you need level 9, which is very expensive nowadays, inflation and all. And then after that, you want Cassante, which is pretty hard to hit too because he's going to be your 9th Shurima in most cases. Sometimes you don't need it though. If you get like 2+1 Shurimas or something like that, or like 3+1 Shurimas, then I think there's a way that you don't need the legendaries, but it's like very, very difficult to get sometimes. But Azir, same build as before, Gwynsu's, and then preferably also Nashers, and then third item doesn't matter. It could be a Gunblade, it could be a Giant Slayer, it could be a Static Shiv, it could be literally anything in the entire world. It would be just fine because the first 2 items are just like so good in combination on Azir that nothing else really matters. Getting some sort of magic pen is pretty useful. So again, Static Shiv on like your Azir, or even on like Talia, or an Ionic Spark on your Nasus is going to be fine there. Next up we have is Rogue Reroll. Rogue Reroll, still solid. It's seen better days though. Pretty much you can use any sort of reroll pattern because it just depends on what carry you're going for. I think Kiana is always going to be played, but you have to decide whether you want like Graves, Katarina, or Echo complementing her. I don't really think it matters that much because it depends on the game. You can't like choose what happens or what shows up in your shop. So just go for whichever one you're seeing. So if you're seeing a lot of Graves early, obviously go for Graves 3 and Kiana 3. If you're not seeing any Graves, skip him, go for Katarina or Echo along with the Kiana. So not as simple of a comp as some other things, even though it's a reroll comp. So you have to use your brain a little bit. So if you want to like turn off brain completely whenever you're playing TFT, just go Twist of Fate because I mean, yeah, it's just at the top there. All right, let's go back down. Where were we? We were at Sorcerers after that. Sorcerers seen better days. Silco's just not a good solo carry. So he is a great secondary carry, one of the best. And unfortunately, the old Sorcerer carry, which was Lux and Sett 9, is just a lot better at solo carrying. So you always need to complement Silco with someone else. That's why he fits really well with the Azir in the Azir Flex. But in this one, like Vel'Koz hits pretty decently, but not the same as some other units. So if you get like 3-star Vel'Koz, then you can talk. But 2-star Vel'Koz, there are better units out there in the game. And because of that, that's why Sorcerers are a little lower down on the list. In case you guys want to know, you may notice the A tier is pretty large. So if you want to know what's like A+, A-, I do have a Patreon or OnlyFans which kind of lists out with a little more granularity. It's not that important. It's not going to make you a better TFT player, but some people like knowing, and some people like playing around with like, oh, like what's exactly what tier. So if you want to look into that, that's something you could do. Speaking of Silco being a secondary carry, in Silco, Aphelios, Bastion, this is kind of like a sleeper comp. I think it's going to come back in popularity. Before all the Earth stuff, I was seeing this a little bit, like a lot of the hipsters were playing it. But essentially, you just play as many Bastions as you can, 4 or 6, and then you run Aphelios with a Rage Blade and then Silco with a Morello. The other items, they matter, but they don't matter. It's just the nature of most stall comps. You just need some ramping item with the Rage Blade on Aphelios, and then the burn damage with Silco hopefully takes everyone down eventually as your Bastions tank everything. Main tank going to be Shen, late game going to be Cassante. Cassante is an absolute monster in this comp in the late game, but it's hard to get him to 2-star because he just lives so long when he is, but 1-star is still solid, so you got that going for you. Rounded out with some Targans with Soraka so that you get healing on a lot of your dudes, you get a lot of shielding, and then they should tank for a very, very long time. Standard leveling for this because you're going for 4 costs, of course. Next up we have is Noxus Reroll. Not that played anymore, and I think the other Noxus versions are a little bit better, but let's say you're playing Earth, you get a Noxus spat, but you have like 5 copies of Samira at the start of the game, then yeah, go for Noxus Reroll. But unless all those specific things happen, just play regular Noxus. Overall, pretty solid build though, especially if you can get it snowballing. In the B tier, we have Karma, we have Challengers. Just don't play Challengers right now, man. Yeah, like you could argue about it in the comments if you want on like your 1 game out of 50 that you did well with Challengers, but they've just seen much, much better days. Like, I would just avoid it if I were you. And then we also have Naafiri. Like, yeah, put these in the back burner. They're so old, we didn't even update the pictures on them because, yeah, there's no reason to play them when there's so many other comps in the game. I say this in a bunch of my other videos, but whenever you're looking at, like, what comp to play or, like, how popular a comp is, you have to think, like, hey, there are 8 players in the game. What comps are going to show up? So 1 to 2 multicasters, sometimes a little more if people are being a little crazy. Maybe 1 Demacia, maybe 1 or 2 Demacia, so like 1.5 there, maybe 1.5 vertical Noxus, 1 Azir flex, and then Ashe reroll, not played that much because you need the spatula, but maybe there's like a Cho'Gath player and then like maybe a build, but you have to guess how often a comp shows up. And then when we have this many comps in the S and A tier, the B tier is just not something you want to just go for from the start. If you get like everything for free, like it's stage 3 and you get like a Kaisa 2-star for some reason and you have like perfect items for her, then yeah, go Challengers, you know. But like unless that happens, like they're just better things to go for, and you could always use that in the mid game and then pivot to something else in the late game anyways, and then you're not really playing Challengers after that. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. But that's kind of like the summary for this week. And so a lot of, like, again, multicasters, they multicasted themselves into the next week. So are they going to be nerfed later? Probably. I'll be coming out with a patch preview on Tuesday when it comes out to let you guys know about that. But that's going to be it for me today for the Meta Snapshot. Hopefully you all enjoyed this, and we will all see you next time. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe, and of course smash that like button. Each like is an LP I gain before the next video.